Time now for our Legal Insider segment with our partners at the Mike Murphy Law Group. The firm handles injury and insurance law as well as criminal matters. Today, we're joined by Michael Byrne from the Mike Murphy Law Group, and we welcome him in studio today. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you in. We're going to answer a question from a viewer, and they ask, what if I got hurt at work due to someone else's negligence? What are my options?
Well, the first question you got to ask is whether that person works for an employer that pays into WCB. So we'll cover that primarily today.
Okay.
It gets a little grayer if you are independent or do not pay into WCB, but assuming you work for an employer where you're covered by workers' comp benefits, you have basically given up the right to sue your employer or a fellow employee for any negligence in exchange for those benefits. So let's say you're working with someone and they mess up and you get hurt as a result. Even if they were negligent, you cannot go after that fellow employee or your employer personally. You have to go through WCB. They'll provide you medical benefits, some lost wage benefits, things like that. Now, if you are working and get into, say, a motor vehicle accident, that's a very different scenario. If it's determined that the accident was caused by another driver, you do have a right to sue that driver for personal injury. However, in doing that, you have to give up your right to WCB benefits.
It's one or the other. This is very interesting.
Yes.
I wonder if a person in this situation not sure exactly whether their business is covered in that way or what their options are. I mean, would it be a good idea to reach out to a lawyer like yourself just to start asking some questions?
For sure. And then generally we'll either contact the employer to confirm, or sometimes you can tell just by looking at a pay stub whether they pay into WCB. And if that's the case, we tell them, unfortunately, that's the route they need to go. That being said, again, if it was a motor vehicle accident, we obviously look into whether it was someone else's fault, and then we have to inform the client or potential client that you have a right to go after this other person in negligence. However, you're going to have to go through your own insurance for your medical benefits, and you'll have to give up your right to WCB benefits.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that there might be another scenario if an employer is not covered by WCB.
If you're not covered, so let's say you're an independent contractor, you're on a job site, whatever it may be, and you do not have access to those benefits, then you may have a cause of action against another party if they caused that injury. But in order to do that, you would have to prove that their behavior was negligent and that it was foreseeable that it led to your injury. If you find yourself in that situation, you may have a cause of action, but it is still a fairly gray area of the law.
Yeah, it sounds like it with these cases. Do they come up frequently in your practice?
Honestly, no. Most people go through WCB. The most frequent we get is people that get in car accidents while they're working. Okay.
Now tell our viewers what your specialty is.
So I specialize primarily, as does my firm, in personal injury and disability litigation. We also have a very rapidly growing criminal defense sector, but we handle pretty much all areas of litigation potentially. I myself do practice a bit of employment law, mostly employee side, so wrongful dismissals, discrimination suits, stuff of that nature.
Well, I recommend the viewer that had this question get in touch with you at the Mike Murphy Law Group, and then you can kind of direct them from there. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. If you have a legal question, please write us at yourmorningatlantic@ctv.ca. We'd love to perhaps answer it on our show in the coming weeks. And a reminder that the information provided in this segment is of a general nature and is provided for information purposes only. It does not constitute professional legal advice. Please contact a lawyer before making any legal decisions.
This edition of Legal Insiders, brought to you by the Mike Murphy Law Group.